welcome back. And our illustrious Tim Alexander is here. And Tim, of course, we have him for the full hour. He's here on Thursdays and any day. By the way, Tim is welcome to pop in. He's got an amazing blog called europebusiness.blogspot, and that's with one S, europebusiness with one S.blogspot.com. He's actually going to be back in his easy chair before his fancy green, I guess it's called a green screen, doing presentations, fireside presentations, I think it is, or similar to that. And,
yeah, well, it's approaching summer here, so I don't think I'm going to do the fireside yet.
How about seaside?
And I had all kinds of software issues, but I'm finally today or tomorrow. I filmed some stuff last night as a test, and it's looking good. So
excellent.
By the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a 5 to 10 minute newscast in the morning and evening, and Jeff DeVlay will probably do the same in Spanish. And it's just a way for people to tune in very quickly, get a video update. And it's not the mainstream news media lies. It's the truth as best as we could possibly tell you.
Yeah, and send me the links, and I'll post it up on our front page of Nutrimedical, and also
I'll be doing some proprietary stuff for your site, too.
Yeah, and I think also you're going to say you're going to have a small fee for, I think, your video clips that will be in a more expanded newscast.
No,
and what we'll do is we'll put
not right away. They'll be free
later down the road. Yeah. Anyway, I'll post some links for you, because I want to promote what you're doing. I've also, of course, we talked to Jim. I won't mention his last name. Who contacted you to try to help you get your blog, do some more work on your blog?
I told him I'm not quite ready yet, but this has been the big hurdle, getting a studio set up in my house that will do it right.
Once you get that done, you can work on it.
I'm very fussy about this because I almost did a national news thing, and I mean, we were talking about way over $100 million to set that up. So even though this is small potatoes, I don't want it to look like Billy Bob does the news.
Well, nowadays, you can put a high-quality news report out that looks very professional, just like maybe the major so-called big box we call lying networks. But you can put a professional-looking broadcast because you've got the academic background and the heart, and the fact that you're a believer. You're going to do a presentation that's truthful to talk about the real facts, and the fact you're not compromised by being in a big box network is really good because the public's going to hear the straight-up truth. And the other thing, of course, is the same gentleman that's helping you later on to expand your blog services. He's working with Ann Morrison, and she's going to have her newsletter and blog up real soon because she doesn't have other projects in the queue. So she'll be first, and you'll follow.
Ann. She's smart. She does good work.
Yeah, she's really, really smart. I appreciate she looks at everything from astrophysics to the plagues that are going on. And I mentioned in the second hour that we have 20 million turkeys that have just been slaughtered because of the H5N1 flu, and that's approaching it for chickens that are laying eggs. There's one farm.
Yeah, they're talking about us having a shortage of turkeys come next Thanksgiving because it takes a while for these birds to be born, hatched, and raised, and so forth.
Well, yeah. Well,
and this is becoming a real problem. They declared a state of emergency, a medical state of emergency because of bird flu. And they think that the canines have picked it up, a form of it. And I mean, here's one reason it's so dangerous. Americans are armed, and they've tried everything they can to scare us into giving our right to bear arms away, and we won't do it. And the Sandy Hook false flag, the event that really didn't happen, right before Christmas, supposedly a kindergarten being slaughtered, and instead people went out and bought guns and bought ammunition. And I remember going to the gun store. I couldn't even find any shotgun shells. Everything was stripped from the shelves.
Well,
they'll use bio-war to try to control it.
That's the only way they can actually. I've calculated out that's the only way they can get collaboration with the public. For example, this thing called that this war game is going to go on in the summer in Texas.
Yeah, Jade, what other?
Jade Hellman. By the way, Jade Hellman is basically initials to tell them that they're going to go and identify and call out patriots. So when it's in your face and they're actually saying, you, Dr. Deagle, and you, Tim Alexander, because you're an educator and professor, and I'm a retired physician that's a consultant teacher and a truth teller, and we're patriots, we're number one on the target list, what I call the Red You're Dead list. And there's different color lists, and I've known this for 25 years. These lists are real. They're not imaginary. And the reason why Homeland Security and the Department of and the NSA, et cetera, are building all these lists up is because they want to know when they can do a door knock and grab you by the neck and haul you off in a bear cat and either execute you or put you in a civil detention camp. And people say, no, they're not going to do that. Jade Helm is doing it straight in your face. Okay, this is not.
Look, the people behind the Gulag system in what had been the Russian Empire and became the USSR, the children and grandchildren of these same people helped to set up the Department of Homeland Security. They are behind this. The same people that were behind Hitler and the Nazis and their death camps and all that are behind this. This America and Europe are now the targets. America first, Europe second. We're the targets. They tend to they want to eliminate us. This is they're in their end game now for their new world order, and it is pure satanic and it is pure evil.
Yeah, let me explain what we talked about in the last hour with Professor McKinney. I'll give it like a couple-minute summary because it'll lead right into your stories. The reason why they're doing this, we've got to get into the twisted mind of the globalists and the Satanists. They think they're doing their version of good. Remember now, evil people don't say what they're doing is necessarily evil. They say it's their version of good. Okay? As twisted as that may seem. Like the abortionist that's killing thousands of babies a month, or the mass murdering dictator, they think it's their version of bringing order out of chaos. That's what Satan literally tries to rationalize. When you get into the mind of these people, what they've done is, this goes back to the ancient priesthood of Sumer.
You're totally right, by the way, Dr. Bill. That's how Satan works.
Sumer in Egypt, the priesthood held all of Tier 1 science. You know, the ancient science of Atlantis, where we talked about this in the first hour with Professor McKinney. They had literally seawater batteries, which Edison essentially rediscovered, and he patented potassium chloride as the electrolyte in his Tesla battery, in his Edison batteries, which, by the way, the biggest project made the most money for him, because these batteries, because they don't create electrolyte problems on the electrodes, they'll last 100 years. And ZapWorks actually takes and refurbishes these, but they're too darn expensive up at ZapWorks in Montana. Now, the issue is this, that there are periodic cataclysms, and the magnetic North Pole is moving at an enormous pace now towards Siberia. And periodically, the planet is crossed by the gravitonic waves of large approaching objects, primarily dwarf stars, or comets, we call them, the size of Venus, which Velikovsky said Venus was a captured comet, to be honest with you, which is why it has the opposite spin ratio, the opposite rotational direction of any other planet in our solar system. Right. And he, by the way, he was good friends with Einstein, so he's not a minor physicist. This guy was a top guy. What people need to understand is that every 3,650 years, and Moses knew this because he was taught by the high priest astronomy, which is astrology. They knew the star signs, and they knew their approach of what's called the ancient destroyer. And they had various terms for it. Some people call it Heraclibus, the destroyer. It's on cartouches in Egypt. When these objects pass, they're the things that create mountains and switch and move the continents. And it says in the Bible, every mountain and every valley and every island will be moved out of its place, which means we're going to have a gravity wave from a passing object. And it doesn't have to be close. It can be 55 million miles away between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter. And as it approaches, the gravity waves can cause major geotectonic events. Already, we're having an increase in volcanism, release of methane hydrates, and a change in the solar activity of the sun, increasing higher energy levels.
Earthquakes, by the way.
Right, and those are gravity waves. What's happening in gravity waves, and I'm going to explain this in terms of physics. What CERN is doing, and they have Kali, the destroyer from the Hindu-Buddhist god Kali, the destroyer, above the CERN thing, because they're mapping out what's called the wormholes in our galaxy, which means high-speed intergalactic travel. If you want a galactic level civilization, you have to map out all the wormholes so you can jump from one star system to another at warp speed. Okay? And what they're doing is trying to develop warp technology so they can do what's called intergalactic faster-than-light travel, which is what they talk about in Star Trek. Well, I know the science of it, okay? And what these characters are doing, and again, it's pure evil, because you have to understand they bifurcated society. They're building underground cities to survive what's coming while they're trying...
800
The globalists basically think that they bifurcated society, so when they do these crazy things like, the Chinese Navy put a task force that enters the Black Sea, and they're going to do war games with the Russian Navy in the Mediterranean. That's serious. This is right out of the Bible. When we see the globalists doing things, they want plagues, they want Fukushima Daiichis, They want famine. That's why they're not even doing things like I mentioned. Why are they not putting something as simple as Alamax in the chicken the turkey feeds so the turkeys don't die of H5N1? Why don't they have better precautions to isolate their birds from wild birds dropping droppings that are carrying these pathogens that are flying over their flywake? For example, the biggest turkey area is Minnesota. And, of course, they've got 1,000 lakes there. What do you expect? You're going to have birds that are carrying, pathogenic viruses that are dropping bird droppings. If you don't have proper isolation of your birds in your turkey factory,
and that assumes
you're
it's not being deliberately spread, too, by the way.
Yeah, and here's the point. The point is, and I said this already, and again, I consider myself a sheepdog for God. I have a couple of titles. A sheepdog for God, which means I have a bark and a bite, which is good. I protect the sheep. I'm also a tailor for the coat of many colors to try to bring peoples together around the world rather than fight each other and destroy each other. And I'm a mortarman for the New Jerusalem, bringing the living stones, which is us, together to build the New Jerusalem. It's not something out there, it's us. We're the living stones of the New Jerusalem. And what the devil wants is to tell us otherwise. He wants to say, you're not the bride of God. You're not going to be a resurrected people that are going to live for thousands of millennia in a world that's safe for people without war and pestilence and without suppressed technology. You're not going to live in a world loaded with pollution that's going to destroy your genetics or give you malformed kids or die early. I believe that the years of man will be restored like the patriots of the original Noah and Methuselah. I think the Methuselah will be considered a child in the deep future where human beings will live for thousands and thousands of years before they really walk from this realm to the next. What I see happening is such a gross evil, people can't see it. And they want to say, and there's a myth. Normalcy has never been. There's never been this time where, quote, the normalcy that people try to presume examples, that things are always stable climate, stable this, stable that, and all you have to do is look out and see a mountain or see the ocean.
You're right, but in terms of the degree of evil that is sweeping the planet now, I think we're in a fairly heightened state of bad stuff.
It says in the Bible, this is the worst time that mankind will ever face in the past or in the future. There is no time that will be equivalent to what's coming. And I want you to go through the news now, because I think what people need to grasp here is the forest and the trees. When we see this, the astrophysics of periodic cataclysm is driving the evil ones that think they're doing, quote, the right thing, and they're twisted, evil, maniac minds.
Yeah. Satan is the father of all lies and liars. And one of the ways that he gets people to go down the primrose path to hell is, supposedly good intentions. If you move away from God, your ability to perceive that which is holy and good is compromised.
Right.
And, I mean, I encourage people to go to church, but, church is just one thing. Some churches can be actually bad. I encourage people to have a personal connection to the Almighty. And if your church helps you do that, then go there. If it doesn't, find a different one. But have that personal connection to God and know that God is love. If there's one word you want to describe God with, I think love is the appropriate term. And if you have God in your heart, and I mean really in your heart, then you begin to perceive things a little bit different, and you can see the evil. And when people come out and start shoveling BS and lies to get you to fall in line with the next war, with the next this, the next that, then you say, hold it. This doesn't smell right. It doesn't feel right. This isn't godly. And it doesn't mean you're a great saint, but it means you're getting your frequencies, your harmonic frequencies, and frequencies is basically everything. We're composed of energy, attuned to God, as opposed to Satan.
Yeah, in other words, you're aligning your will with the will of the Most High God.
Exactly.
I want you to kind of go through some of this news, because it's pretty apocalyptic what you have here. You have the first Saudi troops arriving in Yemen. You got the Chinese and Russians doing a war game in the Black Sea. let's go through some of this news.
Yeah,
and show
you know,
people.
the Black Sea and the Med, the fact that the Chinese are there is really interesting. I mean, that's a long way from China, although China has spent a great deal of money on its armed forces. And the Western propaganda arm, the mainstream media, loves to compare dollars to dollars. In other words, they spend $1 billion, we spend $2 billion, and therefore they're not caught up with us. But if you look at programs like the F-35, the F-22, and so forth, these things are insanely overpriced because of profiteering, corruption at all levels. And, of course, the Chinese have plenty of that, and so do the Russians. But it's a matter of degree. They're putting some very interesting technology in the field. We may be light years ahead of them, but, you know, they can still kill us. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Mad, mutually assured destruction. Yes, we may be able to wipe them out, and thereafter, they're already gone. A little germ that they released in 50 cities in America may take the rest of us out. So, you know, there was the famous movie War Games, and the supercomputer finally perceived the truth. The way to win is not to go to war in the first place. And there is no winning the Third World War.
Right. Well, the only one that wins is Satan, and it's temporary because God's going to wipe them out.
Exactly. And that very much is in the Bible. I mean, but anyway, if you look at the Saudi troops are arriving in Yemen now, the Saudis have really bit off a big chunk, and our generals tried to tell them not to do this. I mean, it's right next door to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has all this equipment, this big air force. The trouble is, most of their pilots are from Pakistan. They don't have the Arab culture is not all that terribly attuned to large fixed battles. It is a culture that was based on tribal warfare, raiding the next tribe. And you literally have people alive whose grandmother was captured in a raid on a neighboring tribe. And sometimes it's not even a grandmother. It may be their wife or something. And they're going into a real powder keg. And so far, in spite of all the billion-dollar warplanes that they've been using, they have not been particularly successful.
What do you think will happen if it's not Iran bringing down a carrier group to the Gulf of Aden, but the Russians or Chinese? They're doing war games in the Black Sea. What happens with Russia and China?
I think we have a term for that, World War III.
Exactly. And then what I see coming next, possibly as early as this fall, when it's called the end of the Shemitah year, the Shemitah is about to hit the fan, is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And welcome back, and Tim.
That's a good song, by the way. What a beautiful world it will be.
Exactly. You know, that's from Donald Fagen.
God didn't create a planet and an existence where maybe half the people on the world are living in poverty. He didn't create a planet where his children kill one another. But he gave us free will. And we threw so many of his gifts back at him. And now we've gone so far down the rabbit hole that we have this concept of political correctness. And it's a post-Vietnam War concept. And, you know, if you see, well, for instance, we're constantly having transgendered and homosexual stuff pushed. And I think most people are like me. I know people that are gay. That's their problem, and I don't want to. I don't hate them. You know, love the sinner, but hate the sin. But that doesn't mean I have to buy into the fact that deviant lifestyle is spiritually or psychologically or morally or physically sensible. And it doesn't mean that if I say, you know, that's sick, that somehow I'm the bad guy because I'm not politically correct. What nonsense!
Well,
and you know, our ancestors go all the way back to Adam and Eve. If they saw this, and I suppose in heaven they can look down and see it, they say, "Well, you've turned everything upside down." You know, and we live in a time that is so warped, and everything's a lie. Everything's a lie. You hear these politicians talk. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, if it's in the UK, whether they're liberal Dems, conservatives, Labor, whatever. They're liars. The truth is not in them. And if they tell you the truth, well, they screwed up by mistake and actually managed to say something.
Exactly. Truthful. Well, we see that way. I call it the Bidenisms, I call them, where Joe Biden will have like a seizure attack of truth. Remember that movie with a Canadian comedian where he sometimes says the truth and people say, no, Biden, you're not supposed to say that. For example, he made a statement last year, which is funny, where he said that the Arab Emirates were fully supporting and funding, and even had to mention bank accounts and individuals, the ISIS and ISIL. No, you're not supposed to say that. And then the Arab Emirate delegate had to actually rebuke the vice president, saying, no, not saying it wasn't incorrect, but you're not allowed to say that. I mean, how dare you say that in public?
Yeah,
I thought it was almost like a comedy routine.
Speak the truth. How dare you?
How dare you accuse us of something we are doing openly?
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, when I look at all the follow the mainstream media, and you can see trends, and we're being prepped now. It's a psyop for World War III and war, the clash of civilizations, Christians and Jews on one side versus the Islamic extremists, the Muslims on the other side, and why that's being done is Satan wants us to sign on to the war. You see, he wants us to voluntarily, and we may be deluded, but that's our own stupid fault, but voluntarily deluded that we need to go to war, World War III, against these extremists, and the Russians are trying to seize Europe, and blah, 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 and we've got to do something, and we better do something. Why don't our politicians do something? And I'm hearing that more and more from friends, you know. We need to do something about these Islamic extremists. And that's a psych war. That's a psychological warfare operation that's conditioning us and getting us to sign on the bottom line, and then the sins of that war, billions of people dying, will partially be on our heads.
Right. Well, listen,
it's very much a spiritual battle.
Yeah. Tim, 90% of the deaths are civilians. They're not going to be the people that are extreme Islam.
Oh, no.
When we have a drone kill, and Obama sits in the Situation Room and he says, I'm really good at killing people. He actually said that last year. I mean, and this is not an SNL stipped. And he actually said he misses meetings, and apparently he cuts them short. But he won't miss his time on Tuesdays in the Situation Room. It's Tuesday, by the way. It's Situation Room time, so they put it up on the big screen. He's got these teenagers, young 20s, sitting in there and driving these drones thousands of miles away. And when they hit a target, it doesn't matter if it's a Pakistani, wedding on the border of Iran's. Yeah, and their wedding party. Don't have an open wedding party. Believe me, if you're listening over there and you can learn and you understand English, do not have a wedding party on the Pakistani-Afghanistani border, because you're going to die. And for every person that they have, there's a person of interest to kill 200 innocents, and then they go back and kill the EMTs that try to save them. So do you think it doesn't create a new crop of terrorists to say, you killed my mommy, my daddy, all my relatives? Yeah. What do you think they're going to do? If I was a Pakistani or an Afghanistani, I would do everything I could to eventually grow up big enough and bad enough to kill as many Americans or people in the West as I could. And, of course, we want to do that. This is part of the game, because the West says, good, we've got a new crop of terrorists, so we can justify taking away more rights.
We got a new enemy.
New enemy. And the thing is, the new enemy is a boogeyman.
World War II was hardly over. I was born Christmas Eve, 1950. Now, that's 5.5 years after World War II was over. And I was born during the Korean War. So we didn't even get through 5 years, and we had a new enemy. The Uncle Joe Stalin, our great ally in World War II, all of a sudden was this great enemy. And the globalist, and remember, they set up the Soviet Union, they set up Nazi Germany, they rule basically most of the planet because they are legal counterfeiters, and they put their people in power and keep them in power. And they want war. They want war for multiple reasons. One, is highly profitable. Two, they get to reshape the morals of society. It's a diversion from all the other crimes they've done. And mostly, it's a blood sacrifice to their God with a small g, Satan. It's a blood orgy.
Right, now,
and they want the death and destruction. They want the little children. One of the drawings is actually a photo with a caption on it that I put on my news blog frequently. It's from, I think, probably Ukraine, and this little girl has this horrible look on her face, and right behind her is her mother. And it says, "Mr. Rothschild, why did you kill my mommy? Why did you have to kill my mommy?" And I mean, that's what it comes down to. These aren't These aren't some sort of drones that we're killing. Drone warfare from one monster versus another. These are human beings, and these are God's children. We're all God's children. And we don't have to have all these wars. My Lord, I was opposed to the Vietnam War. I saw we weren't fighting to win it, and it was wrong, et cetera, et cetera. That was one war. How many wars are we in now? How many places are we fighting and killing people right now today? As much as I read, I can't tell you the definitive answer to that.
Let me give you a statistic, Tim. Let me give you a statistic. Out of 239 years that America's been around since 1776, how many of those 239 years have we been continuously at war?
Almost all.
223.
Yeah.
So out of 239,
it's a matter of degree.
There's only 16. There's only, what is it now? From 16 years that we have not been at war since the founding of the United States with somebody.
Yeah. Well, remember, after World War II, the First World War broke the back of the European powers, and the British still had their empire, but World War II finished them off, and we became the new enforcement arm for the global banking cartel, the Rothschild-headed global banking cartel empire. We do their bidding, and that's why we're in all these wars. And it's totally unnecessary. It's totally wrong. It's totally against the interest of the American people. But do you think the people in Congress care?
Well, they're bought and paid for it. I call it they actually get paid six to 10 times the level of the highest prostitutes on the planet are paid in the Beltway around the District of Criminals. I call it the D.C.
Yep.
Amazing. If you have a comment or question, 800-259-5791. Back in a moment. And we're back. And Tim, I want to change the topic just a little bit and kind of lay out what a couple of what I call bullet points that I think are coming. As I say, I'm a locksmith, not a map maker. If you look at this, I see the world economy teetering, and I think all you need is a major event like a worldwide plague or the closure of the Strait of Hormuz or an economic collapse in Europe, and we're there. And their ultimate goal is...
You're exactly right.
And the ultimate goal, by the way, is globalists want to control us because they don't want us to interfere with their survival in their underground cities when all hell breaks loose on the planet's surface. The globalists know a judgment of fire is coming. Satan knows a judgment of fire is coming. The church doesn't. They think they're going to either get raptured away, and I tell them they're fools.
Well, that rapture bit is only about 100 years old. That was made up.
Yeah, exactly. And people out there, if you're offended by that, you better listen up and listen up hard. Number one, I told this lady in Dallas, and this, by the way, was not my opinion, so thus saith the Lord. I said, if you're unlucky enough, you live in a city where there's 5 nukes targeting Dallas, that are 50 to 100 megatons, you're going to get vaporized someday, and you're going to say, standing around in clouds and looking across, and you're going to see Jesus. And you're going to say, hello, Jesus. That's called the rapture. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen. I said, because God, firstly, is not going to take the whole church away and then bring it back to earth, because God wants the people.
Christianity has been here 2,000 years.
Right. And by the way, God wants the people 10,000 years from now.
The rapture has been around for just over 100 years.
Yeah, it's all a scam.
That ought to tell you something right there.
It's a Masonic scam. And God wants a people having children, having a society, having nations. It says even in the book of Revelations, and all the nations will come up on the holy days of Israel to literally bring sacrifice and so on, and to come to see, to come to Jerusalem after Jesus returns. He actually says right in the Bible. So there has to be nations, there has to be people They have to be believers. Because the non-believers aren't going to be here. They're gone. And they're going to be gone because it says two are in the field and one is taken. People don't understand when Jesus said the term translated from the Aramaic is where the vulture is, there's the body. So he's really saying it's not the good that are taken out, it's the evil that are taken out.
Well, if you think about it logically, and know the level of evil historiologically and currently, it almost has to be that way. The parasitic evil that embraces the earth now has to be destroyed, so that good can thrive.
Right, and that's going to happen. By the way, Satan is in a panic over this. So are all his minions here. And remember, it's not just spiritual beings. It's physical beings from here and from other worlds that are actually interacting negatively with culture in our world and have been for millennia. People really don't realize this is a galactic and a cosmic war. It's a spiritual war. It's a genetic war. It's a toxicological war. It's a war for climatology control. That's why geoengineering is so awful. People need to see the forest for the trees. Why are they doing all this stuff? It's because ultimately Satan's days are numbers. He wanted, as it says in the book of Genesis, to be considered part of the Godhead because he's the most intelligent created being in the universe other than the Creator. But his little tiny intellect is microscopic compared to the infinite intellect and love and power of the Most High God.
Amen.
But he still wanted to call, this is the 17th level of the York Rite for Masonry, is you have to take the name of the ineffable name of the honored Trinitarian unity of Godhead, which is Yah, the Creator God, Baal, the fertility God, and Osiris, the God of the underworld. Two of those three titles are titles of Satan. People don't know that. They say, well, what do you mean? Baal and Osiris are the titles of Satan? Yeah, it goes right back to the ancient world, to ancient paganism, the Druidic cultures, the ancient Sumerians and Egyptians. People start to grasp this stuff. They realize we've got a narcissistic, maniac, super intelligent, crazy being called Satan, the destroyer. He said, what are you doing? It says in Genesis from the book of Job, I am going back and forth on the face of the earth to, seek and destroy mankind. I mean, that's what he's doing. And people say,
well,
no.
He got away from God, okay? And when you get away from God, what is God? God is love, purity, goodness, right, holiness, all that is good. And when you get away from that, what's left?
Only your own ego and your ability to do evil. That's why the definition of good, I call it, good is oneness and evil is unoneness. And oneness means that not some good and some wisdom and some knowledge comes from God. All of it does. And that's why if you don't have a relationship with God, that's why I say that one of my sayings that I think people need to grasp on a simple level is, heaven starts today when you hear and do God's will. Hell becomes evident when the body drops away. And Jesus himself said that, there should be a day when they shall say, did I not cast out devils in your name? Did I not heal in your name? And he said, get away from you, doer of evil. I know you not. What he's saying is, if you don't have a relationship with God, you can't do good. You're not capable of, even if it looks good, even if it looks miraculous, even if it looks wonderful, it's still evil.
All the hype in the world doesn't change the rotten core.
Right, and that's the point. The point is right now, and this is what this is not a prophecy, but it's a prediction. We're going to see a correction in the economy by this fall, probably at least a 20% that's going to really hurt people. We're going to see a crash in food supply. Right now, the turkeys and chickens are just one example, but the violent fluctuations in the climate.
Crop growing area in California is in a 1,000-year drought. That, by the way, is deliberate HARP and HARP technology.
Right, what we're in is literally a Joseph famine. Remember, when the Bible has this duality of prophecies, the first fulfillment of that prophecy of Joseph, of the famine of Egypt, is being fulfilled in our day. We are entering the last of the 7, literally relatively fat years, and we're going to enter into lean years where things are going to get real lean. And we're talking about famine. We're talking about pestilence. We're talking about earthquakes in diverse places. People say, you're exaggerating. I said, you don't need my opinion. You can read the paper. You can go on the internet. You can look at this and say, how come he's right? And to be honest with you, I tell people, start prepping spiritually first and start prepping physically. We talked about power generation with Professor McCanney. We talked about food supplies. We talked about getting to know your neighbor and and Christian witnessing, because you can't live with someone unless they're of like mind. If they're not a Christian and believe in that you're just as important as they are to survive, you don't want to be living with them, because they're literally someday you're going to be the dinner.
And ultimately trust in God and know that He is eternal, and we will join His eternity. And you know what? I mean, death is not the end. If you're with God, death is not the end. Death is
Tim,
the
I'm going to clarify it even more. Eternity starts today. People say, well, who are you, Deagle? I'm no different than anybody else in the sense of anything. I'm just a forerunner. Eternity starts the day you hear and do God's will. It doesn't start at the moment of your death. At the moment of death, what does happen is, if you haven't got a relationship with God, it becomes evident. That's called hell. That's what it is, just no relationship with God. And what becomes evident is that you're no longer capable of evil if you are good, because we, even though we're good, are capable of sin because we're sinners. But there's a sign at the moment of death, and there's a sign that says sinners going up, and there's another sign that points down and says sinners going down. And which crowd are you going to be in? Do you have that piece of paper that's written in the blood of Jesus that says saved by the blood, or do you not have that piece of paper? That's what it is. And you know,
He wants everybody to have that piece of paper.
Right. And that, by the way, you don't do anything to earn it. You don't do anything. I'll tell you what you do.
You get to decide.
Right. He does the calling, we do the choosing. All you have to do is real simple out there. You don't have to do what we have, get a radio show, do this or that, or write a book. What you have to do is simply, if you're at the checkout and someone raises the issue of pro-life, you need to answer them as a Christian witness. When a relative brings up a statement about something, you need to have a Christian witness to it. For example, let's say we talk about Bruce Jenner. Bruce Jenner is a sick individual. He's sick with a spiritual pathogen. He is demonically oppressed and possessed. The man probably has some biochemical and other issues that are going on in his brain as well. But you have to understand what you're dealing with. He's saying basically in the public media, including he's the one that started Kardashians, I have a spiritual disease and I'd like to give it to you, is what he's saying on his ABC.
Oh, you're just not being politically correct, Dr. Bill.
Right. He's saying, I have a spiritual disease, and I have compassion for the man. I think he's trying to be a wonderful father, but he's a sick man with a spiritual disease.
Yeah,
and the problem is our culture
to
wants to abuse us because we point out that we have a person who's otherwise, quote, a compassionate human being, but they're sick. It would be no different than saying he got liver failure, he's in heart failure, he's had a stroke. He's got a spiritual stroke with a demonic possession, and he's saying to us in the media, when he does his review and his interview, hey, I have this demonic possession, society, I want you to have my disease. How about it?
How about eternal life? Turn to God, and it's all yours for the ask.
Right. Absolutely. It's hard for people to take that. They don't want to think, you can't love the sinner while you hate the sin. You can't identify the disease when you realize that society can't go down that pathway. You can't destroy marriage and expect to have society made of people that are not connected. You can't abort an unborn child and not expect to not kill seniors. What do you think is going to happen?
Yep.
74-3070 to claim yours while supplies last. Don't wait. Call today.